let's do a little back and forth, a little bargain shopping, some guys that are on our radar as we proceed here. You want to go first?
I'll let you go first. I enjoyed this exercise. Admittedly, I was doing a lot of work on this, and I thought it'd be a cool piece for allphly.com. I can go first if you want, but yeah, I'll let you go first.
I wanted to mostly stay away from guys that we have talked about already a lot, but I do think we talked about this guy briefly. He was at the back end of my top 100, and we saw Jack Driscoll sign with Miami yesterday. They've lost Sua Opeta. Obviously, Jason Kelce has retired. There's a little bit of a hole for depth on the offensive line right now. You signed Matt Hennessy. Between Matt Hennessy, what looked like the projected 5 starters, Fred Johnson, that's like 7 guys who would dress on game day. You need at least one more. I expect them to draft 1, probably 2 offensive linemen in the draft. But thinking about like a high upside shot, a guy who has a name that might be attractive to Howie Roseman. And if anybody is going to get the tools out of this guy's body, it's going to be Jeff Stoutland. I would be interested in a Mekhi Becton signing.
I like that. You and I are. Oh, no, he's not on my list, but I was compelled to do that.
Yeah, and now this is a guy who has really struggled.
Yep.
Struggled to stay healthy. Struggled to keep weight off, but he has lined up at both right tackle and left tackle. So there's extremely theoretical versatility. I think that would be an interesting camp body shot to take for the Eagles. Maybe it's $1.5 million, and it's incentives up to 4 or something like that.
Yeah, I am with you there because offensive line tools in the body matter, right? There's a position later where I'm going against kind of the athletic profile that I typically seek, but offensive line, I think when you have that type of size and you have that type of upside, that a change of scenery can extract the talent from the player. So I am with you there. He's still so young. He's 24 years old? Is that what you said? And I believe that the 24 number jumps to mind. He's had a hard time with the Jets. They've moved him around.
Turns 25 in a month.
Turns 25 in a month. So 24 right now. I would take a swing there, and he was an option for me. But I really like that.
Yeah, I imagine we're going to have a lot of overlap in the guys we looked at. But
yeah, so well then let's stay on the offensive line in the offensive line category here because I did consider Becton. What I was looking for though was someone with a little more outside-inside versatility. So someone who's tackle, but you can also move him in the guard. This is someone who has starting experience, but he's also young. He's an upside guy. I think he's 26 now, turning 27. And that's Josh Jones.
I had Josh Jones on my list as well.
Okay, yeah. Josh Jones was with the Texans, originally drafted by the Cardinals. I'm going to give you snaps by position. This is according to Pro Football Focus. This is not their grades. This is their charting of where you're playing here. 761 career snaps at left tackle, 612 career snaps at right guard, 256 career snaps at right tackle, 63 career snaps at left guard, meaning that he's played 4 of these 5 spots in games in his NFL career. That's appealing to me. Number 2, the Eagles studied him coming out. This was the COVID year, okay? So this isn't like, you didn't have your top 30 visits like you typically do, but if you go back and you kind of search the archives, Josh Jones had a video conference with the Eagles. Now, whether that is indicative of interest or whether that's just kind of cross-checking, you don't know. 2020 is a hard year to track in that regard, but he is someone who was on their radar, slipped a little farther in the draft than initially expected, but he still has a high ceiling. He's still young, and the versatility makes him appealing. The Eagles have Fred Johnson as a backup kind of left tackle for them. I expect them to draft a tackle in the draft. I think it's going to be their first-round pick. But the thing I like about Josh Jones is he can play multiple spots along the line. He's still young enough to be developed, and he gives you legitimate starting experience.
I like Josh Jones. I think he's a better player. I think he's a better fit. The only reason I chose Becton over him was because I imagine he's going to have a stronger market. Like he has a better history of tape and that versatility. I think there's maybe a little bit more league-wide interest in him, but I think that would be an ideal fit for the Eagles. And there was some Eagles connection. I'm trying to think back because I remember talking to him at the Senior Bowl. There was some specific Eagles connection that he has, and I can't really remember what it is right now.
Blocked for Greg Ward, perhaps?
It's bothering me. Yeah, it might be a Greg Ward thing.
I think he originally committed to Oklahoma State out of high school, and then he transferred to Houston. Played in Tom Herman's.
Been like he was training with Lane Johnson or something like that. But yeah, anyway.
So Lane's got sway. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next up for me, this is what a player we have not talked about. And this is, we think about the kind of guys the Eagles like. They like big names. There's your Mekhi Becton. They also like bringing guys back. And what I want here is another option at nickel, right? They don't really have a guy. C.J. Gardner-Johnson can move there. Isaiah Rodgers, in theory, can play there, but that's not what he did in Indianapolis. I think they need an option here. And this is a player who is not quite of the caliber of Avante Maddox when Maddox is healthy, but he has stayed healthy his entire career. The Eagles originally signed him as an undrafted free agent, released him, went elsewhere, played in Green Bay and Minnesota and Pittsburgh last year, and that is Chandon Sullivan, who is 28 years old. We're talking about a low-level signing here, but a guy who you can pencil in and gives you like a Bradley Roby level of play, but is younger and a little bit more durable. So I'm going Chandon Sullivan for a cheap little deal.
I like that. I was considering him too. He's been productive. He's probably one of those the Eagles wished they did not let him get away. But
they had a lot of guys in that year. It was like Chandon Sullivan, Ryan Neal, and Jeremy Reeves all went on to be productive NFL players.
Yeah, good job by their scouting staff there.
Yeah.
And would certainly make sense, and Howie Roseman's on
And
record.
you know what? That was the year. That was the year when we were whining about them prioritizing keeping the old guys. That was the Casey Toohill, Vinny Curry decision. They had a lot of opportunities like this where they could have kept guys around with a little bit more foresight, and instead they were trying to chase the dragon of this aging roster.
Well, Bo, COVID. Really a bad judgment.
I'll sell that.
Yeah. Okay. I like it, Chandon Sullivan. And
I'm actually conflating that. Chandon Sullivan came into the league in 2018.
Okay.
So that's
okay.
Just for accuracy's sake. That's not accurate.
But Howie Roseman did say at the Combine that they should have had more options at slot last year. And it was something we talked about going into camp, and they moved Zach McPherson over, and they practiced James Bradbury in the slot. But they really didn't have the proven depth behind Avante Maddox. And Avante Maddox had an injury history going in, and you said this is a spot where they can't afford to lose someone. They lose Avante Maddox early on, and it really affected the secondary last year. They end up signing Bradley Roby. I get that, and trying to mixing and match different things, moving Eli Ricks inside. But that's not what I expect them to do this year. I think even if they don't have some of these guys make the team, I think they have more camp bodies or more options at the slot this year. So then I'll go to my slot option for you here. And this is when I spoke earlier about this kind of goes against my type, and I think I'm becoming a little bit of a caricature of myself when I always say first round pick or athletic profile, pedigree. But yeah, I do think that you can't coach tools, right? You can't coach body and speed.
That doesn't say a lot for all the quarterbacks coaches of Kirk Cousins.
You can't coach body and speed, right? You can coach you can coach someone up on technique. You can coach someone up on awareness. You can't make someone taller. I know that. You can't make someone faster. I know that.
You can make people faster, I think. There are techniques.
Marginally so, but not. Okay.
Well, everything's on the margin.
Sure. So anyways, this is someone who, when you look at the athletic profile, you say, nah. You look at the size, you say, nah. But then you watch him play. And I've watched him play over the past 4 years. I watched him play against the Eagles. And you say, all right, I can see something there. He's scrappy. He knows what to do. And that's Miles Bryant. Miles Bryant, slot corner from the Patriots. And I didn't want to put him on this list. I was debating between Adoree Jackson and Trey Herndon. Adoree Jackson, who the Eagles showed interest a few years ago, and Trey Herndon, who's been career guy with the Jags. And both those guys have inside-outside versatility. But I'm not looking at inside-outside versatility here. I'm looking at who can play, who's a slot cornerback on the market. And honestly, I'd rather sign Avante Maddox back than Miles Bryant.
Let's get into that in a second.
But Miles Bryant, who he's 26 years old right now, 1,300 plus snaps in his career in the slot. He's just been a solid player. Made the Patriot. Well, he initially got waived. The Patriots brought him back, and he's just been a steady player for the Patriots. And what jumps out to me is over these past 3-4 years, the Patriots have kept bringing in corners. right? And Miles Bryant's kept playing, kept making the field. And what that speaks to me because, look, when a team's constantly trying to draft over you or sign over you and you keep playing, it's because you're showing characteristics on the field and in practice that your coaches value, that Bill Belichick values, that staff values, your boy Steve Belichick that he values. So the reason I went with Miles Bryant here is if the Eagles want to find like a true slot corner on the market, they say they have Keely Ringo, they have Eli Ricks, they have James Bradbury under contract right now. Obviously, it's Darius Slay, and then maybe they draft a corner early on. You want someone who can play the slot, that's Miles Bryant.
Let me ask you this about Miles Bryant. 26 years old. Patriots are bringing back all these guys from their roster. How much of a concern that they are not bringing him back or have not yet?
I hear what you're saying, and it's a concern. But like I said, they've drafted, or they've had like two Joneses, Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones, and they brought back J.C. Jackson, and they keep signing guys and drafting guys and bringing guys in. And Miles Bryant is the type of player who, just in terms of profile, you want to replace, right? Like, there's nothing exceptional about him in terms of like what he's bringing, but then he keeps making the team, or he keeps making the team and keeps playing. So it doesn't surprise me that they're trying to sign over him, but it also stands out to me that they've done this and he keeps playing.
I think that's an interesting one. Now let's talk about Avante Maddox for a second. Do you think that the Eagles should bring Avante Maddox back? Do you think they will bring him back? Where do you think this stands right now?
Yeah, I think they should, but I wouldn't bring him back with the expectation that he's the Avante Maddox that you've relied upon. Because
I think that part of the complication is if he comes back, there's an expectation probably from his side that he inherits this role.
Sure.
The Eagles cannot count on him being in that role. And does that complicate like the development at what you would otherwise want at nickel? Like, do you want to just give Avante Maddox all the first team nickel reps in the summer when you can't really expect him to stay healthy? Like, I don't know. It's a bit of a complicated thing. I'm like with anything, there's a price where it makes sense.
Yeah, what would you do?
I mean, I would be factoring that into the price. I think I would probably be interested in bringing him back, but I think those are things that you have to address, like with him and with the coaching staff.
Yeah, those are all valid points. I'm with you there. I think kind of the ideal scenario is to bring Avante Maddox back at an affordable price. Like, he's had a chance to see the market. He visited the Saints. He didn't sign. And then you draft someone who can either take his playing time or gives you, makes you feel more comfortable in your depth at that position. I'd be confident in Avante Maddox when he's on the field. I wouldn't be confident in Avante Maddox staying on the field.
Yeah.
And so if you give the first team snaps to Avante Maddox, I'm totally fine with that. But you need to have your third-round pick. Well, they don't have a third-round pick, okay? But you're a fourth-round pick or a second-round pick who can step in and play the slot if and when Avante Maddox goes down.
All right, I'm going to give you my last one, and this is the obvious one. This is not some gem that I have found, and I've been there are a few spots where I wanted to pick a guy. Mm-hmm. I think they could use a good veteran defensive tackle, at a cheap cost, but that's not where I went here. This is not, they've signed CJ Gardner-Johnson, and this is not a position of super need at the moment. CJ Gardner-Johnson made it very clear, as you said at his press conference, that he wants to be a safety.
Yep. And
so if you're signing a safety, that becomes a complicated thing. Where do you play? Like, does Reed Blankenship get on the field? Do you move CJ Gardner-Johnson? And that's why, like, a guy like Julian Blackmon, who I know people are calling for in the chat, I feel like that would create an awkward dynamic, because this is a guy who wants to, this is the middle of his career, right? He's going to be jockeying for those snaps, and in theory, if he's healthy, he wants to be the long-term starter there. I think if the market has not given Justin Simmons his cost that he wants just yet, if there is a 1-year deal, or even if it's a 2-year deal that is, front-loaded, and the expectation is he is here to be an impact player this year, help bring Vic Fangio's scheme along and communicate it to everybody, and there are ways that you can get him and CJ Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship on the field at the same time. By all accounts, this is not a guy who's going to come in and make waves. I think that with enough room as they have under the cap right now, that is the splash that I think I would still be interested in making.
I would not oppose that, and I think the Eagles have stuck to the profile enough of like core, C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Bryce Huff are guys in their mid-20s who you're expecting to kind of be core players for you for the next 2-3 years. I'm okay if you say we're a Super Bowl contender. Let's get someone for this year and just make sure we're good at safety this year. And
if we're not going to get like our linebackers to be really good, and if our second outside corner is a bit of a concern, and if Darius Slay's health is a bit of a concern, how do we like cover for all of that stuff? Well, maybe if you have like the league's best tandem of safeties, that helps, right?
Yeah, and he has a history with Vic Fangio, like you said. I keep hearing this charge that like this is like the dream team thing. Well, there were and you know this better than me.
Unfair.
But you know this better than me because I was covering the Giants at the time. You were covering the Eagles. But part of the issue with the dream team thing was everything was kind of done hastily, right? The lockout just came out. There was no offseason program. You had a new scheme in place. Like there was no. It was just kind of, they got Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, they got Nnamdi, they had Asante, and it's just like, all right, you guys figure it out, right? And everything was happening all at once, and then Vince Young said that. But I think like Justin Simmons, you're not signing Justin Simmons because of his name. This is someone who has experience with your defensive coordinator. If you sign him, what you're getting is like the confidence that, all right, he knows the scheme. He can fit this role for this year while you figure out what Sidney Brown is, while you figure out how CJ fits best, while you figure out if Reed Blankenship is an every down starter in the league under Vic Fangio. So I wouldn't oppose that. I didn't like that if that was the move over CJ, but if that's the move with CJ, I'm okay with that.
Okay. What's your last one?
Yeah, so my last one here is...
And then there are other guys there at safety, like that is the like one of the few positions where there are guys still available. Like I wanted to find a tight end, and there is nobody left at tight end.
Yeah,
like
that's my trade.
Wilcox
That's my trade candidates at tight end. Yeah,
but like Eddie Jackson's still there, Julian Blackmon, who we talked about. There's a few other guys who could fit that role potentially, but I feel like if you're going to do that, you might as well do it for the guy who's really good.
Agreed. So you mentioned they can use more depth along the defensive line. T.R. Tart, and we talked about T.R. Tart during Quackatology. He's been a real productive player. Like the Titans gave him a second round tender at this time last year, which really says something. If you're giving a second round tender, you're basically telling the player we're paying you $4 million, right? And then he was waived or released for his attitude. But he's been an important player for that team. I remember when the Eagles played the Titans, 2 years ago now or so, they were talking about Tart as like man, this guy's tough in the middle. He's a legit nose tackle, so he gives you that depth with Jordan Davis. I'm going to read Greg Rosenthal, our friend at NFL.com, 3 Gs. He was number 8 on Greg Rosenthal's list, and he said, based just off tape, Tart is a monster who could be a steal in free agency. His midseason release from Tennessee won't help his market value, though. And that's the situation here. Like, you get concerned when a guy's waived reportedly because of attitude. Now, there were mitigating factors there. We talked about this with Devin White. When a guy wants a new contract and he doesn't get a new contract, sometimes he can respond in a poor way, doesn't feel appreciated. I'm not making excuses for him. That might have been a situation there. He's a Philly native. That works two ways. Sometimes that's attractive in signing a contract. Sometimes you say, you don't want him to get too close to where he grew up. So that's something you consider, but it could make the Eagles appealing. And I just think that I am like your defensive line needs to be really good against the run this year. The Eagles are still figuring out linebackers. This is not Devin White's strength. Apparently, is his tackling ability. His run tackling ability. Right, he's more of a pass coverage chase guy, if you will, or big play guy. You want to know that you have that juice in the middle. Jordan Davis is going to start, but if Tart can be a strong rotational guy, chance to reset his value, that would interest me.